Hello, everyone. I'm Slava. I see some English speakers here, so we'll do this talk in English. And first, we're going to talk about building a culture and working in a distributed company and the transformation from traditional to distributed company. And first of all, I wanted to ask if how many of you are working in a distributed company? Okay, good. So this is not really just a talk about distributed or not distributed company. I believe those same principles, they apply to every company, and that's why I'm going to tell you a story of transformation. Somebody's helping me. Not yet. So why talk about transformations? I believe that transformations are really important. We underwent a really huge journey on our way as a company. We've been doing a lot of different things. But in a nutshell, I believe that what is not as important as how. And in this term, one of the recent transformations we've done was becoming distributed. And when we went from being traditional to being distributed, we met a few challenges. So the idea was simple. Everyone should be able to work from anywhere and feel equally important as the members of the office, if there is an office. And it's a simple idea. So we decided what should we do to make this idea live. The first step was define the rules. And we went through a process of thinking what will be different and what do we need to change. There were a lot of things. In particular, we had a challenge that we'll have more than one office now, how to treat them. Should there be some main office and subsidiary office, or should they be equal? And we decided that we'll treat the offices as just equal workspaces where anyone could work. Then for the different time zones was another challenge because different team members were in different time zones, so we decided to come up with some overlap hours that would work for everyone and just use those. What to do with communication? This was more simple because we already used digital tools for it, so not much would change. What to do with day offs across different countries? It was a bit more difficult, but we decided to be flexible and let people take days off whenever they want, just agreeing this with their teams. What to do with daily stand-ups? This was not as simple as it might seem, because this is how it looked like before. And you see kettlebell, Gira there is the talking object that you pass when you talk. So this was not that easy to implement in a digital manner. So this left unsolved. But in the end, we did it. We defined some rules, and we came to step number 2. What do you think was the step number 2? I'll be giving frisbees to energize you and to have some kind of interaction. Who wants a frisbee? Okay, prepare. It's a bit more disruptive than I thought. Here. Okay, so what's step number 2? When we have the rules, what's the step number 2? What do you think? Apply them. But how? Strictly. Any more versions? Plan our day. Okay. Interesting, yeah. But when we have the set of the rules, what do we do with them? Write them down, exactly. So we needed some kind of a text that would embody the rules, and we came up with it. We wrote them down. And the step number 3 was enjoy, just work in a new way. But I wouldn't be here if it was like this. So there was a surprise, and surprise was that people follow some rules, but the emphasis here is on the word some. So people follow just some rules. Why that happened? Who knows who this guy is? Gandhi. You want a frisbee? This is easier. So now who can tell me what Gandhi and IT people, especially developers, have in common? What's the same between Gandhi and IT? And most of Gandhi is also Indian, or? Okay, any more versions? What Gandhi has in common with developers and IT people? Glasses. Good version. Any more? Be calm. Okay, maybe. So who knows what Gandhi was famous for? What was his main tactic? What was he doing to make the revolution happen in India? Testing? Protesting. Right, but how? Not following the rules. So actually, the tactic is called nonviolent resistance. So you might have heard this in Russian. It's ненасильственное сопротивление. So Gandhi mastered this tactic of nonviolent resistance, and I think that people in IT, and not just in IT, they also master this tactic. So if there is a rule that nobody wants to follow, people will find a way to not follow. That's developers, in the end, their minds work in the way to find mistakes in the rule, misconceptions, and use them to their advantage. So speaking seriously, even if people follow the rules, we cannot define 100% of the rules. You cannot just have a huge book with every step documented, what to do in every case. And we want people to behave as we expect from them when unexpected things happen, and that's not easy. And we need to figure out what people follow if they don't follow the rule. If there is a rule, but they do something else, why? How does that happen? And answer here is traditions, right? Somebody was in Kyiv, right, before, yeah. The answer is traditions. Traditions illustrate this example in life. When in Africa, you can see billboards, say no to corruption, it's illegal, so the rules are against corruption. But the corruption happens anyway. Why? Because of traditions. People used to do that way. Another example is driving in Vietnam. So people just go on a motorbike on the pedestrian walkway. And this same thing happens in Ukraine, just with cars maybe sometimes. So we're not that different. And why people do this? It's forbidden, but it's a tradition. People used to do this, so they just keep doing this. And same happens in religion, and more of this example illustrates how traditions live on their own. So if you take Buddhism, for example, this is a picture from Sri Lanka, and there it's forbidden to take a photo of you in front of Buddha if you are standing with your back to Buddha. So obviously, when those religious texts were created, when Buddha came out with his teachings, he was not telling people, don't take a picture in front of my statue, never. That didn't happen. But people created these traditions, they reinforced them, they followed them, and that's the reality now. Same thing with corporate traditions and national traditions. So you might think that there is such thing as mentality, and we cannot do anything about it. And that's true, mentality contributes. So if you're going to rent a car, for example, from an international company, let it be, for example, Thrifty, which is available in the US, and you'll have a completely different experience, for example, in Jordan. Recently, I rented a car in Jordan, and it smelled like somebody forgot the trash there for a few days. They even hung 5 little aroma sticks there, but didn't help. So this would never happen in the US, but it's the same company. They have the same rules. That's an international organization. But people follow traditions. You might believe me if you think about Uber. If somebody used Uber in Kyiv and somebody used Uber, let's say, in the US or somewhere else, you would also feel the difference. It's the same company, same kind of rules, but it works just in a little bit different way. So we need to understand how traditions work in order to change this way we behave. And while understanding that tradition will help us to figure out, first, how can we manage a tradition, how can we create a tradition or stop it, and second, which traditions do we need for distributed teams. So to understand the traditions, I think the concept of fast and slow brain is really helpful. Who heard of the fast and slow brain? Yeah, there is a book by Daniel Kahneman about thinking fast and slow, which explains it in detail, but to be short, we have two brains. One is for quick decisions, one is when we think a lot, under some, maybe not a lot, but when we need an answer which is a little bit more thoughtful than just the first reaction. So to illustrate, the fast brain gives us the answer to this question. How many of each species did Moses take on the ark with him? How many? Ark is Kovcheg in Russian. How many? A lot. All of them. No, how many of each species? Couple, right? Any other versions? None. Why? Yeah, because Moses didn't build the ark. It was Noah, right? So here we see example of fast brain engaging, and then lady engages the slow brain. You want a frisbee? Yeah, let's try. But be careful. Okay, so another example of the fast brain working is if I ask you to compare which object is bigger. Which one? They're equal, right? So we are now engaging the slow brain. But still, you couldn't help yourself, and the fast brain will tell you that the one is bigger, the other one is smaller. The same here. The fast brain will tell you that those three figures are of different size, but they're the same. But if I ask you to solve this mathematical problem, you will not succeed with the fast brain. You'll engage the slow brain, you'll think, but engaging slow brain requires emotional investment from us. We need to think, and it takes energy. That's why we don't do it every time. And it wouldn't be practical. If we were walking, and every step we make, we think, how do we put our feet, we won't go far. We'd lose all the energy. So how is this relevant? Because I think what's really important, and not just in a distributed company, is to catch the moments where we use slow brain, when we use fast brain instead of the slow brain, and rethink our decisions. So example from life was, I was in Africa and rented a car, and I was coming to the car, and there were kids playing nearby. And then they saw me, and they ran to the car with me, and I opened the door, and in the door, I had a few mangoes in the bottom pocket of the door. So the kids, they saw mango, and one of the kids, they just grabbed the mango and look in my eyes, quietly asking, not with the words, but with his look, whether he can take this mango or not. And of course, what can you tell? Of course, yes, you take the mango. Then I get into the car and close the door, and those kids, they gather. This is the picture of what was happening, and of course, they are asking for more. They saw there are a few more mangoes. So, of course, I take these mangoes, hand them down, but I only had maybe 5 of them. And there were many more kids. There were maybe 12, maybe more. So not everybody got the mango. And it's easy to feel good. You did something good. You feed a poor child. But later, I thought about it, and I'm not sure I have done a good thing, because now in Africa, a lot of people, they don't send kids to school because it's more profitable to send them to the streets, to ask for money from foreigners, to ask for food, and they grow up, they don't have future, as if they had it if they went to school and they educate and they have a profession. So what I was doing was emotionally rewarding, but not right for long term. And the same happens with the tourists. Kids get used to it, so now it's not possible to just be a tourist in Africa and just go like a normal way you would do in Europe, because people would just come to you all the time asking for things. And maybe if people were not given anything, it wouldn't be that way. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't solve the problem, but we should think about it from the other way and solve the root cause of it. Another thing about work is disruptive communication. How many times you focus on something, you work on some important task, and then a colleague comes to you and say, hey, you have a minute, or can you help me? Hey, look, listen, look what I found online, or something like this. Does it happen to you, the interruption? Yeah. But I bet you would prefer if somebody would just send you a message instead, or they wrote an email, or when somebody calls you. Maybe it's not the best time, but there are some kind of people that just keep doing this, and that's the way they used to communicate. But we need to understand when is appropriate to choose a particular channel. When should we call? When should we go in person? Or when can we just send an email instead? So, getting back to the traditions are powered by our fast brain. So how do we form or change a tradition? I was thinking about it, and I think the way is, first, very important. Write it down. Second is to be or not be a part of it. If you want a tradition to exist, you should be a part of it. If you don't want it to exist, you shouldn't be a part of it. You should do something else. And third thing, you should be vigilant. So when you see that somebody is not following this tradition, you should talk, you should explain, and you should bring this up. So I collected some of the useful traditions for a distributed company from our experience. And I say use this with caution because this will not work for everyone. Every company is different. For example, if you take Amazon, their core value is saving money, giving the lowest price possible. And if you offer them to have a tradition which would contradict with money saving, this would not be Amazon anymore. But the same tradition might work for Facebook, for example, if we talk about the big, well-known companies. The same goes on our level. Each company is different, and you should think which traditions you want for your company and which you don't. So when thinking about traditions and their usefulness, what changed when we moved from traditional way to being distributed was mostly communication. So we started to communicate differently. You no longer can see all of your colleagues in the same office. Somebody is somewhere else, and you need to write them a message or email, or sometimes you just skip. You don't communicate at all because it's energy consuming. And communication affects energy in the company, and energy affects inspiration. I think those are all intersected. So thinking about traditions and their usefulness, I think they should affect one of those. So what can we do? One of the ideas is having some kind of platform to share the knowledge. In our case, we decided to do online hackathons every week on Monday at a set time, and anyone can apply to share some kind of information, even if it's not technical person, if it's a project manager, he or she was at the conference, and they want to share something new, they can host the hackathon and tell colleagues about it. So this provides knowledge exchange and also communication. Another thing is holding off-site meetings. So even though everybody is at a different place, I think it's useful to do at least once a year a gathering of everyone. So we transport everyone in the company to one single location. We spend some time together, we have fun, and this sometimes just a way for colleagues to see each other for the first time. And second thing is BarCamp. So BarCamp is different. This is something we just started to do this year. It's also a gathering of everyone. So everybody comes to the same place, which was in that case one of our offices, and we ask everybody to prepare topics to share. So we got over half of people in the company preparing their own topics and sharing with the colleagues. For many of them, it was the first speaking experience ever. And because we have people who speak English in the company, we asked to do the presentations in English, if it's possible. And again, majority was in English, so it was stressful, but this environment of the BarCamp, when it's the same people you work with, it's a safe environment, so people can do something for the first time. They can share the knowledge. And essentially, it's similar. BarCamp and Offsite are similar. It's both gathering people, but it's different events. On Offsite, you would discover your colleagues from another perspective. You would see what they do besides work, and in BarCamp, they would share knowledge with each other. Another thing is monthly emails. So about 2 years ago, when we became distributed, some months after, I started to send an email to everyone in the company once a month with all the news that happened and our plans for the future, maybe asking some questions. So having this regular feedback loop is important. And these emails are also a good platform to solicit feedback, ask something from the colleagues, because sadly, we are culturally, Ukrainians especially, not used to speak when nobody asks us, maybe. So we are not that eager to give feedback, so we need to ask for it. I think it's important to use the best tools possible, and because especially you work in a distributed manner, it's harder to communicate, so every impediment, whether it's hardware or software, making it worse. So trying to use the tools that are easier is a good idea. But tools are not the only thing. We should know how to use them in the right way. So this is the live example from what happened while using Slack. Slack is good, but here's the story. So it's in Ukrainian, and Alex, our project manager, was in one of our offices in Bratislava, and he was asking if he should buy a hot dog from the stand. And I was asking if the waffle place is open, the next one. He says yes. So okay, so get the hot dog for Lena, and for me and Maria get waffles of different kind, and one without the cream. So he says, oh, I messed up. It's not the hot dogs that are open, but some kind of other sweet, I don't know, it's only in Czech, and in Slovakia it's called trdelnik. I'm not sure if you saw it. It's like let's make it a sweet kind of treat. So it was open, but you can put inside ice cream and different toppings as well. So he was saying it's open, and should he buy something? And I say yes. For Maria, one plain without any toppings, and for me, a hot dog. So the question to you: what did Maria get in the end from the communication? What do you think? If you were Alex, what would you buy? Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, good version. Get the frisbee. But it was not Coca-Cola. Roulette. Yeah, I was also expecting the same, but maybe there are another versions.
No, that was the only open venue, so only
Maybe, maybe.
some unexpected result.
Yeah, well, so I was expecting this. So this is how it looks like, plain relay, and this is what Maria wanted. So I was expecting this. But what Maria got in the end was this. Not the plain roulette, but it was plain hot dog because of misunderstanding, miscommunication. And it was really hard for Alex to convince people to sell him hot dog without anything, without ketchup, without any toppings. But they were asking him, do you really want this? But yeah, so he brought it. So we need to know how to use the tools, and that's why retrospectives are important. I think we should do retrospective activities regularly. We do this in teams, and on a different level where project managers do it with their coaches, and the management team does it. So having retrospectives, talking about things is helping with communication. Another thing is water cooler chats. So who use Slack for communication? Okay, who of you have channels for non-work related activities? A bit less people? Yeah, maybe. So some ideas can be chats for jokes, can be ideas for jokes that are below the belt, as we call it. So it's called underworld in our case. It's chat for sport, chat to say thank you to someone, chat to share good news, talk about games and hackathons. This is just some of the ones that we use, but I think it's useful to have them. And what's important is documenting things. So when you're distributed, it's especially important. Even if you're not, it's also crucial. So whenever you have a meeting, it's a good idea to write down what happened. So if something happens, there should be a written trail of it. And the main quintessence of it, you remember, is a document where most of the company rules and company philosophy is shared. We call it handbook. And I think it's a good idea. Who has this in the company, the document with, single document with main rules and philosophy? Good, nice. And it's important to keep it updated. And another thing is having team building is quite difficult. So one of the ideas was to have a family week, so let people go with their loved ones to the restaurants. If we can gather together with the colleagues, they can do this in the family at the company's expense. It proved to be a good thing, and also I can recommend this to everyone. But whatever you decide, don't forget to write it down and repeat, so it becomes a tradition, it gets into the fast brain, and will be hardwired for it. Again, this is what worked for us. Think what will work for you. And remember how trainer, the coach of the Mike Tyson said once, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So not everything will work. There will be failures, but keep going. Thank you.